Will Smith, Chris Rock, and an emotional intelligence teachable moment. Wow. Wow. So this situation reminds me of one of the most important phrases or ideas that I've wrestled with over the last many, many years. And here it is. And here it is. And I want you to think through this. Does our culture like this idea? Does it wrestle with this idea? Has it sold out on one direction or the other with this idea? Here's the idea. Are feelings the standard for judging morality, or is morality the standard for judging feelings? You could put it this way. Should I worship emotions or what's good and true and beautiful and right and just? Should I let my feelings be the ruler? Should I let feelings make the rules? Or should the right rules guide and assess and evaluate my feelings? You could really put it this way. There's this amazing part of our brain, part of our being called the amygdala. And it's got this capability of hijacking our world, right? If you've ever been in a car accident, I've been in a few, and one of them, it was a really snowy day, tractor trailer starts sliding in front of me. I've been in a few accidents with tractor trailers involved. This was one of them. And tractor trailer starts weaving and sliding right in front of me. He's passing me and he starts to slide. His back end starts shimmying, and I got out of his way, but it was an amygdala hijack moment, right? The amygdala is in charge of fight or flight, right? And some people say it's not just fight or flight, it's fight, flight, or freeze, right? Do nothing. And some of us, that's where we go when we get hijacked. We freeze. We don't fight and we don't run. We completely freeze and shut down. Maybe it happens to you in tough conversations, right? Where you're thinking, I got to do something, and you do nothing. Well, anyway, I avoided the tractor trailer and slid off the road and into the ditch in between the highway, northbound and southbound lanes. There was sort of a grass and a ditch, and I slid down there and just stopped against the bank. And not until the car stopped and I was in a position where I was safe. I was stopped. There were no other cars sliding off the road into this ditch. Stopped and safe, out of the danger, out of the fight or flight mode, did I realize that the radio was on. And it wasn't just on, it was loud. Right? And part of the reason I tell you this is the amygdala has the ability to shut down everything else going on. And it does it for a reason, right? It's rerouting. It's saying, don't pay any attention to anything other than what's going to keep you alive. That's it. Shift your focus to just the things that keep you alive. And all of a sudden you zone in on, all right, there's a space. I can weave in there, right? And you're noticing everything that keeps you alive and nothing that is a potential distraction. The radio would have been an absolute distraction, would not have helped in the situation. So my ears essentially just block it out, filter it out, right? The amygdala, that's great, except when you're not in a life or death situation. And so here's another way of phrasing this question. This question, are feelings the standard for judging morality? Or is morality the standard for judging feelings? Another way of putting it is, who owns your amygdala? Who owns your amygdala? See, Carl Jung had a great expression. He said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. Until you make you'll call it is what it is. You'll call it me being me, you being you. I do me, you do you, right? You'll call it, that's just how I, that's who I, right? Do you have moments where the amygdala decides on your actions? The answer is, of course, yes. The answer is, of course, yes. We should probably pause and have a moment of silence to reflect back on things that we've done or said. I've done and said things that I am glad that I wasn't on national live TV. I'm glad that nobody was recording that expression or that comment or that action or that response, right? Don't we all? If you're sitting there saying, no, you never have, you're probably lying to yourself. But Carl Jung said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it'll rule your life and you'll call it fate. In other words, you've got loops. You've got times when this happens and this happens. Mike Tyson, Evander Holyfield fight. You remember this probably. But Mike Tyson at one point bit Evander Holyfield's ear. He bit his ear. And Tyson put it this way. He said, I just snapped. He said, I just snapped. Essentially he had an amygdala hijack. He didn't say that. He said, I just snapped. He said it reminded him, there was a headbutt in the fight. And he said that headbutt reminded him of an earlier fight and an unfair call. And he just, that situation, boom, 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 right? But should he have snapped? Who owns your amygdala? In that situation, who owned Mike Tyson's amygdala? He allowed Evander Holyfield and some past experience to own his amygdala, right? So Will Smith, Chris Rock makes a joke, right? Will Smith responds. We could step back and we could say, wait. Was it a good joke to make? I mean, I don't know. As a comedian, Chris Rock, most of his jokes, I think, are near the edge, right? I think that's kind of how he makes a living, by saying things that are near the edge or maybe a step or two over the edge. And for maybe part of his audience, it's always, whoa, that's going too far. And that's part of comedy, right? But, if somebody makes a living as a comedian, and not just as a comedian, but making fun of the audience, who owns your amygdala? If you're in an audience and someone is telling jokes, who owns your amygdala? Do you allow them to have control of your actions? Do you allow them to have control of your actions? See, Aristotle put it this way, and I think this is so powerful. He said, anyone can become angry, that's easy. But to be angry with the right person, and to the right degree, and at the right time, and for the right purpose, and in the right way, are you kidding me? Right degree, right person, right degree, right time, right purpose, right way. That is not easy. Aristotle said that is not within everybody's power. There was a study done years ago. They called it the Marshmallow Test. There's even a book, I think it's called the Marshmallow Test. Great, amazing study. And maybe you've heard of it. I've actually done it with, on myself and with kids in the neighborhood and my own kids. And it's really, really, really amazing, entertaining, but also thought-provoking study. What they did is they put a kid in a room with the marshmallow. And the teacher would say, here, this is your marshmallow. And maybe marshmallows aren't your thing. So maybe for you, it's a Hershey Kiss. Or maybe it's a delicious cup of espresso, or maybe it's a dessert, limoncello, or a wine, or some tiramisu, or I don't know, maybe it's chicken marsala, or maybe it's a slice of pizza. But anyway, the teacher would come in and give you something that you really wanted to eat. And they'd tell the kid, hey, this is yours, do what you will with it. It's yours. I have to leave, I'll be back in a little while. And they'd leave for some amount of time. And they wouldn't say, I'll be back in a minute or 2 minutes. They'd say, I'll be back, I'll come back. And, that's your marshmallow. That's your slice of tiramisu. That's your, cold shot of limoncello. That's your glass of, Sangiovese, Chianti. That's your dessert. You can do whatever you want with it. But, if you don't eat it, if you don't drink it, when I come back, I'll give you a second one. So they did this study with, I believe it was thousands of kids. And they found out that 1/3 of the kids didn't wait. They didn't wait. When the teacher came back, marshmallow was gone, right? Tiramisu's gone. The glass of wine, gone, right? They didn't wait. 1/3 of them didn't wait. And you fast forward with those kids, with those little kids, with those, I think they were elementary kids. Fast forward to when they're in high school and they're taking the SAT scores. The ones that did wait, their SAT scores were 210 points higher. Who owns your amygdala? Who owns your emotional response, right? Go back to my original question. Are feelings the standard for judging morality? Or is morality the standard for judging feelings? Should feelings make the rules, or should the right rules guide the feelings? For those kids, I mean, could they learn? Could they learn to wait? Of course they could. I mean, you've learned in certain situations not to, right? Not to eat something, or not to order something, or not to spend money on something, right? Or not to say something, or not to send the email or the text. You've learned to do that in some situations. In some situations. I think we could really kind of summarize this by something Warren Buffett said. Warren Buffett said he got this advice decades ago. I think it was about 50 years ago now. He said he had a mentor that said, Warren, you can always tell someone to go to hell tomorrow. You can always tell someone to go to hell tomorrow. Warren said it's such an easy way of putting it. You haven't missed the opportunity, just forget about it for a day. If you still feel the same way tomorrow, then tell them then. But don't spout off in a moment of anger. I think the whole planet has heard of the book, The 7 Habits, Stephen Covey's book. I remember the first time I came across that book and I thought, seriously? I actually laughed. I was probably 20 years old or so, 20, maybe 22. I think it was actually 22 when I was in a leadership program with GE created this incredible leadership program. And I remember seeing that book and thinking, are you kidding me? Like, this is all common sense. This is all common sense. You know, that was 22. You know, now, you know, I like the book. I like the book. Why? Because common sense is rarely common application. Common sense is rarely common practice. And one of the most powerful points in that book, I mean, the book's full of powerful points, but one of the most powerful is this: between stimulus and response. Between stimulus and response, there's choice. There's choice. Now, if you don't own your amygdala, right? If you have not practiced, if you don't have strategies, if you haven't taken strategies, found strategies, practiced those strategies, there's a really good chance that stimulus and response are right next to each other and choice doesn't exist. And you, when somebody says something or does something or a certain situation, right, you just go and act. You just go and act. Now, I'm going to add this thought, and I'd love to hear your comments on this. There's an expression we love in our culture, and it's don't judge, don't judge, don't judge, don't judge. Don't judge. Judgment-free zone, right? And I think the intention behind it is very good. I think the intention behind don't judge or judgment-free is very good, but I think we're missing something. I had a mentor, brilliant man, that he loved to say, Jonathan, that expression is wrong. So what do you mean it's wrong? He said, well, you have to. He said, you have to. You absolutely have to judge actions. You have to judge actions. He said, you can't, you're not supposed to judge people, but you have to judge. He said you'd have to be a fool to not judge actions. If you don't judge actions, how would you know how to act? He said, you know, of course, we've got this like, hey, discriminating is bad. Bullying is bad, right? Killing and robbery, right? There's a difference between killing and healing. There's a difference between robbing and being generous and charitable and helping, right? There's a difference between inflicting pain and helping somebody recover from an injury. There's a difference. We have to judge actions. We'd be a foolish society. We'd be foolish individuals if we didn't judge actions. But he said, see, there's three parts to this. There's three parts to this. There's the act, what's done. There's the situation that the act is done in or surrounding the act. And then there's the motive. He said, we're not to judge the motive. We don't get to judge the heart. We don't get to judge the backstory. We don't get to judge what's going on in that person's life. Why did they choose to do this? Why did they choose to do this? You know, he said, you could say, hey, this person ate a pork chop. They ate a pork chop. Well, there was dinner, there was food, it smelled great, right? The act is they ate a pork chop. The situation is where they were, who they were with. Oh, it smelled so amazing. But the motive, he said, you don't get to know the motive. He said, honestly, I mean, if we're brutally honest with ourselves, we don't even know our own motives, almost really ever. You know, you're putting money away for retirement, but why? Why? Well, because you have reasons, right? But there are reasons you don't know. There are reasons you've never spoken. Maybe there's this reason that you remember an aunt or a grandparent or right. You remember somebody, a neighbor that didn't. Right? And that reason you might not vocalize if you were asked, why are you doing this? And you'd say, well, here's the reasons, right? But the motive, we rarely even really know our own motives that deeply or intimately. And then to try to know another person's motives. And this is what this mentor said to me. He said, Jonathan, you have to judge actions, but don't judge the motive. Don't judge the heart. So Chris Rock, I don't know. I don't know why he decided to use that joke. I don't know if there was a lot of thought to it. I don't know if it was improv. As a person who gets to speak quite a bit in front of live audiences, I say things all the time that are improv, that are a piece of. Where I'm saying, I'm going to use this story, I'm going to ask this question, I'm going to say, but then I'll add something. And sometimes it's just in the moment, and sometimes it's noticing an expression on someone's face. I don't get to know the motive behind Chris Rock's joke. I don't get to. I don't get to know the heart. Will Smith. I don't get to know the motive, the heart behind his response. I can know the action. I can know some of the situation. But I don't get to know the motive or the heart behind it. Emotional intelligence. Who owns your amygdala?